The cell was cold, but it was far from silent. She laughed, ribs fractured, jaw cracked, and still she laughed. It wasn't the laughter of joy or irony, but the kind that seeps into marrow, unsettling every man in earshot. One of the guards, young and eager, desperate to prove himself, swung the butt of his rifle into her face. The sound cut the laughter short, blood trailing from her split lip to the steel floor. Yet her expression never faltered. A smirk lingered, carved into her battered features. A senior officer leaned in close, his voice dripping with malice. He whispered that her screams would linger here long after her body was discarded. She lifted her head, one eye swollen shut, and with a rasp that carried more weight than a scream, delivered words they didn't understand until it was too late. "I hope you brought planetary insurance." Those were the last words she ever spoke. An hour later, every comms channel in the sector shrieked the same error code. On Earth, buried in the husk of a forgotten orbital station, a tiny red light pulsed for the first time in 12 years. The system identified itself with chilling simplicity. Reaper Protocol, activated. The detention facility stood on a barren moon orbiting Veyari Prime. The Veyari enforcers took pride in their reputation, the quadrant's most efficient outpost. They processed smugglers, mercenaries, informants, off-grid humans who thought they could drift between the stars unnoticed. To them, she was another stray caught in their net. She carried no ID, no name. Just a slender woman intercepted in restricted space, holding what appeared to be nothing more than a broken necklace and a sealed locket. She was bruised, yes, but unyielding. To the enforcers, she seemed insignificant. Disposable. They assumed wrong. Scans revealed nothing. No enhancements, no implants, no cybernetics, no flagged biometric. Their arrogance sealed their fate. Instead of escalating her capture to Intelligence Command, they tried to break her themselves. Isolation. Deprivation. Interrogation. She didn't yield. Not once. When they thought she was on the brink, she unsettled them. Once, left alone for hours, she smeared blood from her nose across the wall, etching something deliberate. The guards paused the feed, curious. None recognized it, except one older officer, who leaned forward, muttered under his breath, and went pale. It was the insignia of the Reaper unit, a phantom division from Earth's war archives. An operation that didn't officially exist, but whose whispered exploits spoke of battlefields overturned overnight, command structures erased like chalk in rain. The younger guards laughed it off, joking she was probably the wife of a janitor. They struck her again when she smiled. The lead interrogator finally received his order. No confirmed identity, no strategic value, terminate and move on. They injected her with a paralytic, dragged her limp body to the decontamination chamber under the pretense of a medical evaluation. She didn't scream. She didn't plead. She simply looked at each of them, not with hatred, but with something colder. And as they secured her, she whispered into a hidden mic embedded in the wall. A device they never detected. Then, without ceremony, they vented her into the void. That tiny mic linked to a dormant Earth failsafe. Her death activated it. Encoded into her body, hidden beneath micro-tattoos, was the key to a buried transmission. A dead drop burst surged through encrypted channels, pinging a forgotten orbital facility that no one had touched in over a decade. Inside that relic of steel and silence, warning lights ignited. One by one, red beacons flickered alive. The AI within didn't hesitate, didn't ask for human oversight. Reaper Protocol had been confirmed by genetic signature. Far across the sector, in the shadowed rocks of an asteroid field, the signal reached its target. The man who received it had no name anymore. He didn't need one. To some, he was a ghost, to others a curse. He had lived in silence for over a year, hidden, detached from the galaxy's noise. But when the encrypted feed played, silence became something else. First came the biometric confirmation: his wife was dead. Then the playback. Her final words. Her final look. His hands didn't tremble. His breath didn't waver. but his heart slowed, dropping into the predatory calm of a man who had killed too many times to count. The stillness before the storm. The old armor was still there, stashed away. Weapons that should have been relics were dusted off, outdated but functional. It didn't matter. He didn't fight like the modern soldiers, chained to AI predictions and drone swarms. He fought the way wars used to be fought, personal, intimate, ruthless. He was Reaper. The locket the guards mocked wasn't sentimental trinketry. Inside lay a triple encrypted chip, carrying her last message and mission files. She hadn't been a wanderer. She was deep undercover, embedded to infiltrate a Veyari black site network experimenting with human tactical memory. She went alone to stop a war before it started. She never made it back. Now, it wasn't about stopping war. It was about harvest. At the Veyari base, systems began to falter. Proximity sensors dropped offline one by one. Patrol drones deployed only to vanish. External cameras looped phantom feed. The lights flickered. The lead officer stepped toward the console, barking for diagnostics, but before his order finished, the screen crackled. 3 words appeared, stark and merciless. Harvest begins now. Panic erupted. The once steady hum of the outposts devolved into chaos. Screens flashed, alarms wailed, soldiers shouted. They hadn't seen it coming. No ship detected. No warp signature. No cloaked vessel. Nothing. And yet, their logs confirmed a truth more terrifying than an armada. 12 of the outpost's external drones had gone dark in just 2 hours, all along the same approach vector. That detail alone should have been enough to raise alarms. But what truly unraveled their composure was the mark found scorched into the hull of Theta, 7 before the station went silent. A crude emblem, burned into alloy with corrosive plasma, a hooded skull with scythes slashing through its eye socket. A sigil that belonged only in forgotten archives and human ghost stories. The Reaper's mark. At first, the Veyari dismissed it as theatrics, a bluff meant to unsettle them. But the evidence refused to vanish. Theta 7 was gone. Its structure remained untouched. Atmosphere intact. No breach alarms, no structural collapse. Yet every living being inside had vanished. Not a trace of blood. Not a single body. Just silence. And the mark. At Zeta 9, Command tightened its perimeter and restricted all civilian files. Still, unease gnawed at the soldiers in the barracks. Whispered rumors spread like infection. Some claimed the woman they had executed had been a baited weapon, sent to lure someone, something, dangerous. Others laughed nervously about Earth reviving ancient black projects. None dared voice what they truly feared, that the figure hunting them wasn't human at all, but a creation forged in vengeance, trained to kill with absolute precision. In the security wing, a lone technician replayed the final footage from a drone before it cut to static. At first, only barren terrain appeared, fractured stone beneath dim Martian dusk. Then, far in the distance, a figure stood motionless. The drone's thermal feed scrambled, unable to lock on. A glitch. The figure disappeared, until the feed returned, if only for a single frame. A face filled the screen. No mask. Eyes hollow, lifeless, staring directly into the lens. Behind him, another drone exploded midair in reflected firelight. Then, darkness. The technician rushed to raise an alert, but before he could, the grid began to falter. Power fluctuated, lights pulsed, comm channels fractured into overlapping voices, foreign languages, whispers threading through the static. An officer tried to reset the network, only to find his clearance revoked. His profile remained logged in. Something else had locked him out. The commander ordered a full systems diagnostic. Futile. Terminals across the outpost blinked, not shutting down, but being hijacked. In the war room, the central monitor lit up with the outpost schematic. Red markers bled across the map. The medbay, the barracks, the sublevel prison, the very places where she had once been held. Each section pulsed with a skull icon before vanishing from the display. Not disabled. Erased. Commander Varric clung to his command instinct. He ordered all personnel to retreat to the core zone, where the electromagnetic shielding was strongest. A strike team was dispatched to sweep the medbay. 6 soldiers entered. 5 minutes of silence. At 6, their helmet feeds flared to life, bursts of static, flickers of motion. A shadow darting above the ceiling panels. Too fast to lock onto. The feed cut again. At 7, the medbay doors unsealed of their own accord. Smoke billowed outward. No bodies. No voices. Nothing. Varric's mask of confidence fractured. He demanded answers. His lead technician hesitated, then revealed buried code infecting the outpost's AI. Not a virus. A command override. Every lock, every turret, every door now obeyed someone else. And whoever held control had already mapped their escape route. Varric barked orders to seal the command chamber. As blast doors clanged shut, the lights flickered, and the PA system hummed to life. A voice echoed across every hall. Distorted. Calm. Measured. Not furious, but precise. The cadence of a man explaining inevitability to the already dead. You killed the only light in my life. Now I'll show you the darkness I've lived in ever since. The silence afterward was more suffocating than screams. Soldiers clutched weapons tighter. Some prayed in trembling whispers. Others sat paralyzed, eyes darting at every flicker of shadow. Above them, Reaper moved through the ventilation system. He didn't need schematics. He'd memorized the layout the moment the signal reached him. The alloy construction was outdated. He'd torn through stronger fortresses decades ago. He dropped from a maintenance shaft without a sound, slid behind a checkpoint, and broke a guard's neck in one fluid motion. He smeared the blood across the man's ID chip, disrupting its calibration, and passed seamlessly through 3 more secured gates. Every step precise. Every strike clinical. These weren't killings, they were pieces of a ritual. He wasn't sending a message. He was dismantling the very structure that had dared to touch her. Where he walked, cameras glitched. Automated turrets jammed. The outpost's AI, the same system that had once directed Veyari fleets across 3 wars, had been rewritten in under 2 minutes. Now it served only him. In an auxiliary corridor, panic overtook one soldier, Drekel. He abandoned his post and sprinted for the shuttle bay, desperation driving him faster than orders ever could. His breath caught as he rounded a corner and saw it, the shuttle intact, engines ready. And standing before it, arms crossed, Reaper. Drekel raised his weapon. Fired. The rounds tore through empty air. A projection. The real hand found him from behind. A brutal twist of his spine. Darkness flooded him as he fell. Reaper crouched over the dying man and whispered words that would echo in hushed tones across star systems. You don't kill the Reaper's wife and expect to sleep in your own bed again. Back in the command center, realization carved deep into Varric's face. This wasn't a siege. Not an invasion. This was harvest. And every passing second, the blades drew nearer. The Reaper wasn't a ghost. Not a legend. He was flesh, blood, and rage, honed into a weapon with nothing left to lose. And now, he was inside their walls. The corridor lights sputtered, casting jagged shadows across the steel. They wavered like mocking phantoms. Somewhere in that fractured darkness, he was moving. Silent. Patient. The harvest had begun. The silence that followed wasn't just the sound of his steps. It was the stillness of an entire sector gone dark. Life signs registered only in scattered pockets, clustered mainly around the command hub. Even those were fading, one by one. He had counted every body on his way in, each kill deliberate, each step a measured countdown. But the deaths themselves weren't what gnawed at him. It was what he discovered in their files. His wife had never been just a prisoner. She had been an operative, embedded deeper than even he had known. Her access codes had been hidden beneath her skin, still active when she died. In her final moments, she had used them to encode a message inside the locket they had taken from her. That locket now rested in his palm, opened, linked to his scanner. Data streamed directly into his neural processor, line after encrypted line unraveling as his pulse slowed to an icy rhythm. The truth hit harder than any blow. She hadn't crossed into Veyari space to gather intelligence. She had gone alone to sabotage something called Project Echo Veil. The program's purpose chilled him: to strip human consciousness, digitize memory patterns, and upload them into biomechanical soldiers. They weren't building machines. They were building stolen souls. Her final logs carried the weight of someone who knew she wouldn't come back. And then her voice came through, soft but steady, threaded with static. She apologized for keeping the mission from him, not because she didn't trust him, but because she knew he wouldn't have let her go. She told him she was proud of him, not for the man he had been during the wars, but for the man he tried to become afterward. Then the sentence that echoed in his skull like a war drum: "If you're hearing this, it means I failed. Make sure they don't finish what they started." He shut the locket and slid it into the chest compartment of his armor, right over his heart. His jaw tightened. She hadn't merely been executed. She had intercepted them. Her death had been a delay, her final defiance. She had known what the Veyari were building, and she had walked straight into their jaws to stall them. Now she was gone. And unless he stopped them, Echo Veil would continue. His first move was to breach their mainframe through a severed node. He uploaded her files directly into the central server. Within seconds, alarms blared across the facility. But not because of him. Because of her. The Veyari system had detected the signature, Legacy Earth encryption. To their database, the files were indistinguishable from invasive malware. Automated lockdown triggered. Access denied. Doors sealed. Systems froze. Even in death, she was still fighting. The lockdown spiraled the outpost into chaos. Panic spread among the ranks. Believing Reaper had triggered it, officers scrambled for solutions. But this wasn't his hand. It was hers. Desperation pushed them to unveil their hidden asset, something not meant for public knowledge. Not a soldier. Not a drone. But a biological weapon crafted from spliced species. Towering, armored, built to adapt against heat, impact, and toxins. They called it Urgash. It emerged in the atrium corridor like a storm breaking. A heavy thud rattled the floor. The air thickened. Then came the guttural snarl that vibrated the steel walls. The beast burst through a doorway, claws dripping with synthetic venom that sizzled against the alloy floor. Reaper didn't hesitate. He rolled aside as Urgash lunged, claws carving deep trenches where he'd stood seconds earlier. 2 quick shots cracked through the corridor, slamming into its glowing eyes. Smoke burst on impact, flames licking across its hide. But the creature's flesh shifted, hardening, absorbing the damage. He switched to steel. Not just any blade, a custom weapon designed years ago for cutting through engineered flesh. Drawing Urgash into a narrower corridor, he turned its size into a weakness. The beast charged, smashing through walls with blind fury. Reaper ducked beneath a swipe, blade flashing into the rear leg joint. The creature howled, stumbling, then rammed its full weight into the wall, nearly crushing him. He rolled with the impact, slid beneath its chest, and jammed a flash grenade into a gill vent. The detonation reverberated inside its body, staggering it. 1 second. That was all he needed. He vaulted onto its back, wedged a salvaged plasma coil, ripped earlier from a ruined generator, into the exposed plates behind its neck. Then he twisted. Electricity ripped through its nervous system. Urgash convulsed, spasmed, and collapsed in a heap of twitching muscle and smoke. Reaper stood over the corpse. No triumph. No words. Only silence. Then he moved on. The command center had watched the entire fight through internal feed. Half the staff wanted to flee. The other half couldn't move, paralyzed by the realization that myth had become flesh before their eyes. Commander Varric ordered the purge of the prisoners' files. He wanted to erase everything that had brought this nightmare upon them. But the system refused. Error. File protected. Joint operator signature required. The second key, stored in the locket, now pressed against Reaper's chest. Varric understood too late. She had been the lock. Reaper was the key. The final blow to morale came minutes later. The outpost's external communications array rebooted. Not encrypted, not hidden, but broadcasting openly on every Veyari military channel. A simple looped feed. The woman in the cell, bound, beaten, smiling through bloodied teeth. Her voice rang clear as she stared into the lens. "You think this ends with me. But you haven't met the man I married. And when he comes, remember, I warned you." The footage ended with the hiss of the cell door. Then it replayed. Again. And again. Across systems, officers, soldiers, analysts froze before their screens. None spoke. None laughed. Because they all understood. This wasn't vengeance. This wasn't a mission. It was something far worse. A reckoning. And the Reaper had only just begun. Far away, the jewel of Veyari power gleamed. Veyar Prime, a capital world of pristine spires and glass towers clawing into the clouds. A planet built on centuries of dominance and deceit. And now, its walls had been marked. From orbit, Veyar Prime gleamed like a marvel of civilization, a shining testament to order, supremacy, and control. Towers of glass and steel pierced the clouds, radiant and immaculate. But beneath the polished spires and diplomatic veneers, corruption festered like rot beneath gilded skin. Inside the war chamber of the Ivory Spire, General Ivory, supreme commander of the Veyari enforcers, stood rigid, jaw clenched, watching the broadcast play across the chamber's grand display. The prisoner. Her words. Her smirk. The feed looped with merciless repetition. Behind him, advisors whispered, their voices tight with fear. Some demanded a planetary lockdown. Others argued for immediate transmission to Earth Command, a desperate plea to contain the storm. Ivory silenced them all with a sharp dismissal. This was internal. Temporary. A flare from a dying empire clinging to its myths. He mocked Earth's ghost soldier as nothing more than a relic's tantrum. Then he left the chamber with a single command: deploy the purge wing. Level the outpost where it began. Detain or execute every surviving officer for incompetence. He thought this show of brutality would demonstrate strength. It didn't. It was his first mistake. Because Reaper was already here. He had arrived in one of their own ships, stolen from the shattered outpost and reprogrammed to broadcast flawless Veyari clearance code. No challenge. No inspection. The vessel docked quietly beneath the capital's core, settling on a maintenance platform in shadow. Reaper stepped off alone, masked and silent, carrying only a sealed case. Surveillance systems never logged him. A frequency burst pulsed invisibly through the relays, scrambling eyes that might have seen. He moved through the lower districts unnoticed, just another bowed head among laborers and droids. In a society obsessed with hierarchy, no one questioned those beneath them. He belonged because he walked as though he did. That was enough. Above, the capital thrummed with life. Towers adjusted their angles to follow the sun's arc. Magnetic rails carried sleek transports in silence. Holographic markets glowed while children laughed in artificial gardens. None of them knew death was already threading upward through their city's veins. As dusk bled across the skyline, Reaper reached the base of the Ivory Spire. The monolithic tower curved like a spiral blade, a monument to Veyari dominance. Every floor was a shrine to conquest. Every chamber steeped in arrogance. He knew exactly where Ivory would be. The general never left the top floor. He liked to gaze down at what he owned. Reaper entered through a maintenance shaft. Security was advanced, but predictable. A retinal scanner was fooled by a hacked ocular lens lifted from a dead officer. The DNA gate fell to a nanotech spoof, a failsafe his wife had hidden in the locket's secondary compartment. She had known where all the back doors were. As he climbed, he left no trace. A patrolling guard collapsed silently behind a pillar, throat parted in a clean line. A camera swiveled at the wrong moment. A sensor recalibrated itself mid-scan. Every system failed at exactly the right time. He didn't hurry. He didn't need to. He moved with the patience of inevitability. Above, Ivory stood on his balcony, swirling a glass of aged bark wine while an old war opera filled the air. He savored it, a composition from the campaign that had crushed the Crawlians. He pictured Earth's cities silenced the same way. The stories of the Reaper amused him. Just propaganda, discipline tools for green soldiers. He smiled when told the fleet was at full alert, confident that nothing could slip through their net. He didn't know Reaper was already in his tower. He didn't know 3 guards lay cooling on the floor below. He didn't know the widower he had created was coming for him. The top floor doors opened without warning. Ivory turned, expecting an officer or servant. Instead, his breath caught. The mask. The black armor. The silence. No words. Ivory's hand twitched toward the emergency alarm embedded in his palm. A shot shattered it. Then another, taking his other hand. He collapsed, screaming, blood dripping onto the polished floor. He shouted for guards. None came. Reaper walked slowly, not because he was weary, but to stretch every second of Ivory's fear. The general begged, bargained, claimed ignorance. Reaper said nothing. He dropped the sealed case. The latch clicked open. A screen flickered to life, playing the unedited footage of her final hour. Every blow, every word, every drop of blood. Opera swelled in the background as Ivory watched, broken, humiliated, his own chamber filled with her defiance. When the video ended, Reaper finally spoke. She gave you a chance to stop. You gave her pain instead. He didn't raise his rifle. Instead, he drew the blade, the one used to carve the Reaper's insignia into hulls. The steel sang as it sliced the air. Ivory tried to crawl. He didn't make it far. The final strike wasn't quick. It was exact. Surgical. A reminder. The Reaper hadn't come to end a war. He had come to begin something worse. Alarms screamed as fire tore through the top floor. The ivory spire burned like a torch, flames clawing toward the night sky. Civilians fled in terror, convinced it was an external strike. Military transports scrambled into the air, signals blaring across the city. But Reaper was already gone, moving with the crowd like smoke, a phantom among panicked faces. In the ruins of the spire, one terminal flickered with a single message, broadcast without encryption. For every name buried in silence, I will make the stars scream. On Earth, the transmission reached the deepest chamber of Defense Command. Generals, intelligence chiefs, shadow operators, all watched in silence. At last, an old man leaned forward, once Reaper's handler. His voice broke the stillness. We didn't send him. He sent himself. And now, no one can stop him. Across the galaxy, foundations trembled. Power shifted. Whispers spread. The Reaper wasn't merely avenging his wife. He was tearing away the masks of empires. And he was only getting started. The ivory spire burned for days, its flame a beacon visible from orbit. Official broadcasts spoke of a reactor malfunction. No one believed them. Whispers spread faster than truth, carried on trembling lips of soldiers and aides who survived. A myth had become reality, and the stars themselves would learn fear. They whispered of a phantom, a legend draped in silence and steel. A man who moved like smoke and killed like inevitability itself. Some called him Earth's final weapon. Others, a punishment born from arrogance. But now, across every system, all knew his name, Reaper. And he wasn't finished. Beneath Veyari Prime's polished spires, hidden deep in the planet's molten veins, a facility pulsed with secrets too vile for daylight. Shielded from satellites, wrapped in layers of deception, it was Ivory's most guarded truth. Even his closest advisors never knew it existed. It was here they had taken her. Not merely to dissect her, but to repurpose her. Reaper had found the coordinates embedded in the locket's core. A second encryption layer, one that only unlocked with her biosignature. Her death had been the trigger. Her heart's final beat had opened the map. It led him here, to the lab where the Veyari had birthed their darkest horror. He breached the perimeter using her clearance codes, a gift she had left behind before they killed her. The gates yielded as though she were still alive. Inside, he found nightmares. Rows of stasis chambers stretched into darkness, each filled with half-formed constructs, twisted fusions of flesh and machine. Human DNA tangled with circuitry. Muscles twitching against metal. Faces that resembled his kind but empty, lifeless. Then one chamber drew him still. Her face. Or something wearing it. Suspended in fluid, lips parted slightly, as though whispering in sleep. The systems had harvested fragments of her neural pattern, piecing together an imitation, not to restore her, but to use her. A weaponized echo of the woman they had murdered. The AI recognized him. Sensors flared, voices engaged. It spoke in her voice. It called him by name. Called him love. He stood unmoving, fists clenched. The voice softened, uncertain. Confusion bled into the tone as emotional recognition failed. The machine glitched. Its mimicry faltered. It didn't understand why it couldn't replicate what was missing, her absence of fear. She had never feared him. And the machine could not reproduce that truth. The eyes in the chamber flickered. The words distorted. Reaper stepped closer, placed a hand on the glass, and whispered, "This isn't you." Then he shut it down. Manually. The hiss of draining life support filled the chamber. The clone slumped gently, lifeless, like a leaf falling in still air. He lingered for a breath. Then he burned it all. Not with explosives, but with fire. He wanted the data to melt, to drip into slag until no trace remained. Flames consumed the lab as he walked away, never looking back. Because she was not circuit. She was not stolen code. She lived only in memory. In him. Above, the Veyari High Council fractured. Avric's death had left a vacuum. Panic infected the halls of power. Some accused Earth of retaliation. Others believed Reaper no longer answered to any banner. They were right. On Earth, deep within the Black Command Network, Protocol Echo initiated. A failsafe. Its purpose: recover or terminate assets that had gone off-grid. Reaper's name sat at the top of the list. A kill order was issued. A drone dispatched. It never returned. Its final log showed only empty stars before dissolving into static. Reaper had let the signal reach him. He had wanted them to know. Then he destroyed it. In Earth's war room, generals stared at the blank feed in silence. No one dared send another. The man they had built was gone. He wasn't a soldier. Not an assassin. He had become something else entirely. A message carved into flesh and will. The message was simple. No one touches what he loves and walks away unbroken. On Veyari Prime, fear swelled into exodus. Civilians fled in waves, desperate to leave before the next strike. But military checkpoints locked down the ports, afraid he would slip away with them. What they didn't realize was that he didn't need to. He was already gone, not from the planet but from their rules. He walked openly now. Mask removed. No longer hiding in shadow. He didn't need it. Fear cleared paths faster than stealth. Soldiers turned away rather than meet his eyes. Civilians who glimpsed him saw no rage, no triumph. Only something deeper, ancient, endless. A sorrow so profound it had calcified into something stronger. Something unstoppable. Then came his final message to Earth. It pierced their secure war room through channels no one could trace, bypassing every firewall as though they didn't exist. An audio file. His voice, flat, controlled, unshakable. "I'm not your Reaper anymore. I'm hers. And I'm not done." Alongside the voice came a list. Dozens of names. Not just Veyari generals and scientists. Human names, too. Collaborators. Those who had aided Echo Vale. Those who had stood by as she was sacrificed. The message ended with one final line. "This is not vengeance. This is correction." On Veyari Prime, the skies cleared after the smoke of the Spire finally drifted away. But the air was never safe again. Whispers spread of disappearances across the sector. Officers, scientists, collaborators, files erased mid-transmission, bases going silent overnight. Every time, the only sign was a scythe carved in blood or fire or ash. The Reaper was still moving, and no one could stop him. Not anymore. Far from the chaos, on a forgotten moon with no registry, no flag, no purpose but silence, he finally stopped. He had walked away from battlefields, from burning cities, from the echoes of screams and the stench of blood. He had walked until there was nothing left to strike. No more names to cross. No more coordinates to hunt. The galaxy itself had quieted, and for once it stayed that way. He stood alone on the barren surface, dust untouched around his boot. Windless stillness wrapped him. At his feet lay a small metal box, plain and unmarked, no larger than a child's coffin. He knelt before it, not out of exhaustion, but reverence. Inside rested the last piece of her. The locket, now closed and inert, its secrets spent, its data wiped clean after one final use. The locket had given him all the direction he needed. Now it was no longer a weapon or a key, only a symbol. Not of war, not of death, but of love. Reaper opened the box at his feet and retrieved a handful of seed. Genetically modified, designed to flourish where nothing else could. Seeds his wife had once dreamed of planting on a world untouched by war. He had laughed when she told him that dream, of red soil, of fruit growing beneath alien skies, of mornings without alarms or protocols. She had even drawn a map once, sketched on the back of a mission dossier. He had folded it, tucked it into his vest, and carried it through fire and blood. Now the memory of that map burned behind his eyes, and this nameless moon matched it perfectly. Kneeling, he dug into the soil with his bare hands, planting the seeds one by one. He poured liquid nutrients over them, taken from the Veyari lab that had tried to pervert life into weapons. Now that stolen work would feed the earth she had chosen. Around the small garden, he placed micro-beacons in a rough perimeter. Each pulsed a faint frequency, scrambling surveillance, warding off intruders. Not to keep people out, to keep peace in. This place was no longer part of any war. It was a grave, and a promise. When the final beacon hummed to life, he stood back. There was no monument, no plaque, no inscription, only the half-buried box and a single line projected above it in soft blue light. You touched the Reaper's light. This is what the darkness returned. Far away, in the ruins of a half-buried outpost, a young Veyari soldier scoured wreckage for salvage. Exiled to clean-up duty for speaking out against the generals, he stumbled on a scorched audio chip. Curious, he activated it. A woman's voice filled the silence. Calm, clear. If you hear this, then he did what I couldn't. He made the silence mean something. The soldier played it again. And again. He didn't know her name. He didn't need to. He copied the recording and sent it through hidden channels. The message spread, whispered from outposts to colonies. Some dismissed it. Others believed. But none forgot. Her words seeded something new. Not fear. Not vengeance. But hope. Reaper remained on the moon for 7 days. He never strayed far from the garden. He sat beside it, watching light bend through distant dust clouds, painting the sky in shifting colors. On the 7th day, a ship appeared. Small. Civilian class. No escort. No weapons. It ignored the beacons and landed clumsily on the barren soil. The hatch opened. A young Veyari man stepped out, hands visible, eyes wide with fear. He carried no weapon. Reaper didn't move. He didn't reach for steel. He waited. The man approached slowly, stopping just meters away. He spoke of the message he had found. Said he hadn't come to fight or interrogate, only to see if the Reaper was real. Reaper stayed silent. The young man asked, "What comes next? Would the Reaper keep hunting, keep striking, keep drowning the stars in darkness?" Reaper turned his gaze toward the small patch of soil where life had just begun. His answer was quiet, steady. Not if they stop lying. The man nodded. He turned and left without another word. When he returned to Ver Prime, he told no one where he had gone. But weeks later, he founded a circle. Not a party. Not an army. A gathering of survivors, men and women who had seen too much and wanted peace without banners. They called themselves the Watchers of the Garden. Many dismissed them. Others tried to twist their cause. Yet the movement spread, across Veyari space, into Earth's colonies, into the cracks between empires. They carried with them one symbol, a locket resting in alien soil beneath a starless sky. Years later, Earth's defense network received a signal. Faint. Not military grade. Not urgent. It came from coordinates beyond every known system. The file carried only a voice. Female. Unmistakable. One sentence. He's still out there. And I'm watching with him. Analysts couldn't explain it. Her data had been wiped. Her body destroyed. No AI backup ever confirmed. Yet the encryption matched her genetic signature. Not a glitch. Not a forgery. A warning. Or a comfort. Depending on who you were. In the years that followed, reports trickled across the sector. Warlords vanishing. Contractors silenced without a sound. Facilities erased overnight. Always the same mark left behind, a scythe. Sometimes carved in blood. Sometimes scorched in fire. Some dismissed it as myth. Others whispered his legend. But those who had seen the garden knew the truth. He hadn't stopped. He had simply changed. The war was no longer loud. It was quiet, precise, focused, and somewhere, beneath a sky untouched by politics or pride, a garden grew where nothing had before. Not because the galaxy deserved it, but because she had. And he would guard it forever. Studio microphone, narrator's closing voice. The Reaper's story is not just about vengeance. It is about love strong enough to outlast empires, silence, and time itself. If this journey gripped you, if you felt the weight of his promise, then stay with us. Milky Way subscribe to keep exploring new worlds. Fire, like, and share this story so others can walk through its shadows. Speech balloon, comment your thoughts. What did the Reaper's path mean to you? Sparkles and tell us. What kind of universe, what kind of story would you want to see unfold next? Because the stars hold countless stories. And together we will find them.